The Grand Canyon is 277 miles long, up to 80 miles wide, and attains a depth of over a mile. While the specific geologic processes and timing that form the Grand Canyon are the subject of debate by geologists, recent evidence suggests the Colorado River established its course through the canyon at least 17 million years ago. When countries assess their annual carbon dioxide emissions, they count up the cars and power stations, but bushfires are not included, presumably because they're deemed to be events beyond human control. In Australia, Victoria alone sees several hundred thousand hectares burn each year. In both 2004 and the present summer, the figure has been over 1 million hectares. At the beginning of each fiscal year, funds are allocated to each state account in accordance with the university's financial plan. Funds are allocated to each account by object of expenditure. Account managers are responsible for ensuring that adequate funds are available in an appropriate object before initiating transactions to use the funds. Well, blue is one of the most popular colors. It is one of the least appetizing. Blue food is rare in nature. Food researchers say that when humans search for food, they learn to avoid toxic or spoiled objects, which were often blue, black, or purple. When food dyed blue is served to study objects, they lose appetite. Although it hails from a remote region of the western Himalayas, this plant now looks entirely at home on the banks of English rivers. Brought to the UK in 1839, it quickly escaped from the Victorian gardens and colonized riverbanks and damp woodlands. Now it is spreading across Europe, New Zealand, Canada, and the US. How do we imagine the unimaginable? If we're asked to think of an object, say a yellow tulip, a picture immediately forms in our mind. But what if we try to imagine a concept, such as the square root of a negative number? The core of the problem was the immense disparity between the country's productive capacity and the ability of people to consume. Great innovations in productive techniques during and after the war raised the output of industry beyond the purchasing capacity of U.S. farmers and wage earners. Pluto lost its official status when the International Astronomical Union downsized the solar system from 9 to 8 planets. Although there had been passionate debate at the IAU General Assembly meeting in Prague about the definition of a planet and whether Pluto met the specifications, the audience greeted the decision to exclude it with applause. Ever since I remembered, Father woke up at 5:30 every morning, made us all breakfast, and read newspaper. After that, he would go to work. He worked as a writer. It was a long time before I realized he did this for a living. Although Botswana's economic outlook remains strong, the devastation that AIDS has caused threatens to destroy the country's future. In 2001, Botswana has the highest rates of HIV infection in the world. With the help of international donors, it launched an ambitious national campaign that provided free antiviral drugs to anyone who need them. And by March 2004, Botswana's infection rate has dropped significantly. New research shows that during the global financial crisis, workers who stayed in jobs did not reduce their working hours, despite the claims that cuts in hours have led to job losses. A study found that the life of people who stayed with the same employer remained relatively unchanged. Life expectancy have increased dramatically in the last century. Most people these days will live for over 70 years. This is more than double the lifespan of the average human in the 17th century. We can attribute our longevity to advances in medicine and lifestyle. While everyone agrees that living longer is wonderful, overpopulation is becoming a serious environmental concern. You may have heard of the new fad known as ecotourism. This means tourism which is environmentally friendly and conscious about conserving the environment. The key is to minimize the physical, social, and behavioral impacts of overseas travel. Tour groups will often work with local and indigenous communities to design respectful and memorable programs for visitors. Charles Darwin published his paper on the origin of species in 1859. It is one of the most well-known pieces of scientific literature in human history. In the paper, Darwin proposed the theory of natural selection. He states that for any generation of any species, there will always be a struggle for survival. Individuals who are better suited to the environment are fitter, and therefore have a much higher chance of surviving and reproducing. This means that later generations are likely to inherit these stronger genetic traits. In an attempt to lure new students, leading business schools, including Harvard, Stanford, the University of Chicago, and Wharton, have moved away from the unofficial missions and prerequisite of 4 years of work experience, and instead have set their sights on recent college graduates and so-called early career professionals with only a couple of years of work under their belt. Food is one of the most important things you ever buy, and yet most people never bother to think about their food and where it comes from. People spend a lot more time worrying about what kind of blue jeans to wear, what kind of video games to play, and what kind of computers to buy. Global Management is a program specially designed to equip students with the knowledge and skills required to become an effective leader in diverse business contexts and varied intercultural settings. The program acknowledges that contemporary markets are increasingly complex in terms of culture and demand, that information and communication are crucial for success, and that social responsibility for sustainability and corporate entrepreneurship are crucial. If you have a chronic disease such as heart disease, diabetes, asthma, or back or joint pain, exercise can have important health benefits. However, it is important to talk to your doctor before starting an exercise routine. He or she might have advice on what exercises are safe and any precautions you might need to take while exercising. Tesla came over from Graz and went to work for Thomas Edison. Nevertheless, Edison offered him a job, promising Tesla $50,000 if Tesla could redesign Edison's breakdown-prone DC generator designs. The new generator designs were a vast improvement over Edison's originals. Upon completing the job, Tesla went to Edison to collect the $50,000 promised for the task. Tesla, Edison replied, "You don't understand our American humor," and Tesla was never paid. Tesla actually worked for Edison in his early career. Edison offered to pay him the modern equivalent of $1 million to fix the problems he was having with his DC generators and motors. Tesla fixed Edison's machines, and when he asked for the money he was promised, Edison laughed him off and had this to say: "Tesla, you don't understand our American humor." Many people believe that employers discriminate against older people because youths have more energy and creativity. This is not true. The main reason for hiring younger workers is payroll. In most countries, your salary is dependent on how many years of work experience you have. It is far more cost efficient to hire postgraduates fresh out of university than senior staff with over 20 years of industry knowledge. Each tube-shaped microbot is a sandwich of three materials: a graphene outer layer, which binds to heavy metals, a middle layer of nickel, which gives the bots magnetic polarity so they can be pulled through wastewater with magnets, and platinum inside for propulsion. Just add a bit of peroxide to the wastewater, and it will react with the platinum to form water and oxygen bubbles, which propel the tubes along. The term supernova was coined in the 1930s by a memorably odd astrophysicist named Fritz Zwicky. Born in Bulgaria and raised in Switzerland, Zwicky came to the California Institute of Technology in the 1920s, and there at once distinguished himself by his abrasive personality and erratic talents. He did not seem to be outstandingly bright, and many of his colleagues considered him little more than an irritating buffoon. Domestication is an evolutionary rather than a political development. They were more likely to survive and prosper in an alliance with humans than on their own. Humans provided the animals with food and protection, in exchange for which the animals provided the humans their milk and eggs, and yes, their flesh. A young man from a small provincial town, a man without independent wealth, without powerful family connections, and without a university education, moved to London in the late 1580s, and in a remarkably short time became the greatest playwright not of his age alone, but of all time. How did Shakespeare become Shakespeare? Lincoln's apparently radical change of mind about his willpower to emancipate slaves was caused by the escalating scope of war, which convinced him that any measure to weaken the Confederacy and strengthen the Union war effort was justifiable as a military necessity. In the past, learning English as a separate subject seemed relatively easy. A textbook selected and graded items of language, which were put into context and then practiced intensively. New items were carefully controlled so that the student could cope with quite easily. Now that English is used as a medium of instruction, however, all this has changed. Unknown items of grammar and vocabulary appear in text which attempt to explain new and often difficult information. Akimbo, this must be one of the odder-looking words in the language. It puzzles us in part because it doesn't seem to have any relatives. What's more, it is now virtually a fossil word, until recently almost invariably found in arms akimbo, a posture in which a person stands with hands on hips and elbows sharply bent outward, one that signals impatience and hostility. Yellow is the most optimistic color, yet surprisingly, people lose their tempers most often in yellow rooms, and babies cry more in them. The reason may be that yellow is the hardest color on the eye. On the other hand, it speeds metabolism and enhances concentration. Think of yellow legal pads and post-it notes. Cheerful sunny yellow is an attention getter. While it is considered an optimistic color, people lose their tempers more often in yellow rooms, and babies will cry more. It is the most difficult color for the eye to take in, so it can be overpowering if overused. Yellow enhances concentration, hence it is used for legal pads. It also speeds metabolism.